Hello. How are you all doing? Thanks for joining. I'm going to let a few more people join before I start talking. But I appreciate you all taking the time to be with me today. I'm going to be talking about the ebook as well as the two new services that I'm offering within my healing practice that are connected to the ebook. So we're going to get started maybe in about 2 more minutes, and then we will start our conversation here. How's your Saturday going so far? Feel free to comment. Hello. Hope you all are having a good weekend. It's only noon here in Seattle, so we're just getting started. Or I'm just getting started, rather. Hey, hey. If you have purchased a copy of my Spiritual Hygiene ebook, feel free to load it up, or if you have it printed out, to reference it while we're discussing, because I will be taking your questions about it, and as well as just sort of walking through a brief summary of it and also the services that are connected to it that I'm going to be offering as of this spring. So feel free to load that up and we will get started very soon. Good day to you too, Quaro. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So we're going to give 1 more minute and then I'm going to get started. Thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate you all being with me this Saturday. I promise it's going to be worth your while. 1 more minute and then we will get started. I've got my copy of my book here and I just, want to reference it when I need to, because ye old memory is not what it once was. So, soon we shall start. Just out of curiosity, where are you guys from? If you can drop your city in the comment. Oh, thank you, dear. I appreciate it. I just learned how to put some makeup on this face properly, and so every opportunity is an experiment, and I'm just glad the experiment looks decent. All right, Los Angeles. I got some people in Los Angeles. Detroit, Midwest. I'm from Chicago, so I stand for the Midwest, even though I live in Seattle. Hey, Toronto. Toronto's like my second home. Hello, Evolve to Love. Okay, so we're going to get started. What up, Newark? Thank you so much for joining. So, welcome, everyone. Happy Saturday, happy weekend, happy New Year, happy full moon. Oh, Roy, you're from Chicago. Right on, my hometown. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you spending your time with me, and I promise it will be worth your while. I am Negara, for those of you who are new to me, and I run a business called Nagara Ekadumu Art and Healing. And today I'm going to be talking about an ebook on spiritual hygiene that I produced and is currently on sale in my online store, that I produced and started distributing in December of last year. So it's been out for about a month. Hey, Sharon. And I'm really proud that this was able to come out, and the response from you guys has really been positive. And so I am going to be building on that and talking about that increasingly where healing is concerned in 2020. And so my motivation for putting this book together really came from what I was seeing happening with my healing clients. Over the course of 2019, 2018 as well, but especially in 2019 when my business really ramped up, I really saw and started to understand more in depth that the crux of many of my clients' challenges were their was there for whatever reason, and no judgment here, but was the inability to connect spiritually, what I call spiritual connectivity, in a meaningful way, such that they were getting feedback, getting instruction, being able to clearly communicate with their ancestors and spirit guides for the purpose of their own wellness. For many clients, I was divining for them and seeing the gamut of issues, but seeing also a lot of issues that just stemmed from a lack of a spiritual hygiene regimen. And connected to that, the lack of a really dedicated, regular, consistent practice that involved venerating, communicating, and working, most importantly, their ancestors and spirit guides. And so the more I began to see this, the more I began to think, okay, not everybody needs to get initiated. Not everybody needs to be a priest or priestess. Not everybody needs to be a spiritual leader, guru, healer. But at a minimum, people deserve to feel empowered enough and have a level of spiritual know-how such that they can effectively work, venerate, communicate with their ancestors and spirit guides for their own healing, for their own well-being, and for that of their families. And that is what a lot of people are missing out. And the reasons for that are various. That's a whole nother live. I may need to get alive and talk about some of the history behind these things. But so that's what I was seeing, and that is what prompted me to put this book together. Because really and truly, that is, as far as I'm concerned, a basic human right and a birthright for one to be able to have effective, functional communication with their spirit guides and with their ancestors for their own personal wellness and healing and for that of their family. So that is what drove me to write the book. That is what also has, in addition to the feedback that I've gotten from the book, that is also what has driven me to create a set of services that extend the life of the book and that really focus around spiritual hygiene. That being the case, let's get started with the book. So, Spiritual Hygiene ebook by myself, Negare Kadumu, your favorite Capricorn, Yai Kisi Balongo, Espiritista Mortera, independent scholar and art writer. That's a whole lot, but that's who I am. That's what I do. Now, going through, as of page 4, we're talking about, my intro, my gratitude, the reason why I started doing this, which is the connectivity piece, which I have already explained. Now, the first part of the book consists of 3 questions, and these 3 questions are designed to help individuals situate themselves within this spiritual hygiene environment, which is contextualized by ancestor veneration, mediumship, with one's ancestors and spirit guides. What does it mean to them? So these three questions are really key because it really helps you think about why you are doing this, particularly what is the galvanizing moment at currently that sent you to this. Those questions are: what does spiritual hygiene mean to me? Why is it important to me at this moment? What do I want to learn about spiritual hygiene that I do not already know how to do? Those three questions were created specifically to have you really think critically about what you want out of this, how you want to use this book, and the steps along the way. Now, subsequent to that, the book is separated into 5 different parts, if I remember correctly. Actually, 4. My apologies. Part 1, structuring your spiritual hygiene regimen. Part 1, venerating and communicating with your ancestors and spirit guides. Part 2, maintenance of your ancestor altars and shrines. Part 3, removing stagnant and negative energies, ushering in dynamic and generative energies. Did I miss anything? And part 4, your spiritual hygiene schedule. These categories are intentionally kept broad in the book because this is not meant to be a treaty on spiritual hygiene. Who knows? I might write a treaty on spiritual hygiene later, but that's not what this meant. That's not what this was meant to be. This is meant to be a very practical, useful guide that you can literally sit next to you as you are embarking upon your practice, as you are doing your practice. If you find it helpful to refer to this book while you are literally putting in the work with your ancestors and spirit guides, then I have been successful. That to me is a marker of success. Again, also very practical. There are so many ways in which spirituality is abstracted that we get into this, very profound, deep ideological place where we don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Again, that's not what this is. What this is about practicality. The fact that we have busy lives, that we want to be spiritually connected in a meaningful way, in a useful way, and we want to see the benefit from that. And so how do I do that? This is not the abstract pie in the sky. This is bringing it down and making it meaningful to individuals' lives. Because otherwise, if you can't do that, it's not useful, especially in the course of a life where you have family obligations, relationship obligations, professional obligations. It was very important for me that this book be functional in that way. And so just briefly, I'm going to go through each of the sections and the structure of the book. First, we start out with venerating and communicating with your ancestors and spirit guides. And I start there because that is a base level of communication that's needed. That's a base level of skill that's needed, I should say. The only way you're going to be able to develop this relationship with your spirit guides and your ancestors is if you initiate conversation with them. And vice versa, they should, as per the established boundaries of your relationship with them, initiate conversation with you. And so a basic component of that is praying. And so included in this part 1 section, there is advice and actual prayers that I wrote out that will support you in initiating those conversations and continuing those conversations. In each section, you will notice a box that's called Pro Tip, and that Pro Tip is included as an additional bit of information that will allow you to better adjust, modify your practice. The point of those is to add increased efficacy to your practice. And again, guys, if you all have questions, please feel free to put those in the comment box and I will get to them as they come through. This continues, part one continues talking about divination as a form of communication. Once you are comfortable praying and then going into a divinatory relationship with your ancestors and spirit guides is highly recommended. There are numerous ways to divine to your ancestors and spirit guides, and I suggest some of them in the book. Just to share a few here, we're talking about mediumship. We're talking about tools. So tools such as cards, dice, depending on if you are a part of a specific spiritual tradition that uses specific tools. It could be coconut, cowrie shells, playing cards, scrying. There's also tasseography, pendulums, that kind of thing. And so that being the case, just examples of divination. Another one that I include are dreams. People, when they think about divination, they don't often think about dreams as being a form of divination. For me, it is. For me, it was important in this ebook to get you to start thinking more broadly about what divination is. Divination is not always just throwing an implement. It can be, but not always. Divination certainly is mediumship, being able to receive messages from spirit, from your ancestors through the clear senses. And what are the clear senses? Clairvoyance, which is seeing, clairaudience, which is hearing, clairsentience, which is feeling, clairgustance, which is tasting. There's one that's for touch, and I'm forgetting the term for it. But you get my drift. Another form of divination, another mode that could be considered divination is also transpossession. That is when one's body is taken over, not by force, willingly, as in these things take place in a very specific space that should be designed to welcome the spirit in via transpossession and under the watchful eye of someone that knows how to care for you, the person being possessed, and the spirit that is possessing. And so these are some of the things that we will be talking about when we get into deeper discussions via the mentorship program and the member circle, which I am actually going to talk about a little later. Again, please feel free to put your questions in the comment field if you have any. Next part is the maintenance of your ancestor altars and shrines. Altars and shrines are a focal point for communication, prayer, and works and divination with your ancestors. If you belong to a specific spiritual tradition, or if you are practicing within a specific spiritual framework, there is a look and a feel to what these altars can look like, or should look like, I should say. And I'll be talking about some of those and giving some examples further down the line. Most importantly, when you are dealing with maintaining your altars and shrines, is that you do it on a regular basis, that you don't do it when you get good and ready, that you set a frequency and a time and a date that you can stick to. One moment, people. Sorry about that. That you choose a date and a time and a frequency that you can stick to. Why? Because that shows that you are upholding your part of the agreement that you set in your communication and in your prayers and in your divination with your ancestors and or spirit guides. That you are committed to the relationship, that you are going to do X, Y, and Z on with regular frequency. And you are going to stick to it, and you are going to make that a part of your life. That shows your trust and confidence in them. And on the flip side, as a result of your consistency, you too should be receiving that level of consistency engagement from your ancestors and or spirit guides. Now, part 3. Once you have established communication and you're praying and you're divining, once you have established consistency with your interactions with your ancestors and spirit guides at your altars and shrines, then you can begin to move into works. Now, I am not aware of any spiritual tradition, any non-Abrahamic spiritual tradition, where they did not do work with ancestors or spirit guides. Particularly when you are talking about African diasporic traditions, you're talking about traditions where work was involved. Now, what do I mean by work? By work, I mean, yes, prayer, divination, communication. However, I also mean being in conversation with your ancestors and spirit guides and discussing with them your goals for yourself and or your family, the things that you want to achieve, asking their insights on what is going on that perhaps you cannot see or have not yet seen, and developing together with them solutions that can help you achieve what it is that you set out to achieve. Again, guys, if you all have questions, just post them in the comment box and I will answer them as they come through. Just go ahead and post them in the comments and I'll answer them. Thank you so much. And so, yes, we're talking about work, actual tasks. Now, people may get a little intimidated when I say work. And they're just like, oh, Lord, another thing that I need to do. It's work. Nothing. You can't avoid work. You cannot avoid work. Not in this life. I mean, maybe you can avoid work if you're wealthy. But, I mean, if you've got a spiritual practice, there's no avoiding work. So that being the case, what you can do so that that work is organized this is an excellent question, Nick, and I'm going to get to it very shortly. What you can do so that this work is organized is prioritize. And what does that mean? That means that on a given day, a given week, if you work with your ancestors and spirit guides on a given week, then on a weekly basis, then you prioritize what it is that you want to speak to them about in that conversation that you want to get their insights for. And in the course of that conversation happening through divination or however it's happening, be it mediumship, actual divination, that sort of thing, then you, through a process of trial and error and process of elimination, you start to be able to sense what kind of works they want you to do. I'm just going to go back to this session so I can give you some examples of that. So in the Spiritual Hygiene book, I give examples of what spiritual works would look like. We're talking about things like spiritual bath, preparing an incense that you can use to smoke out your home or your work environment, consecrating protective jewelry, spiritually cleaning your home, those kinds of things, doing a reversal or revocation. That's what I'm talking about. And again, in the mentorship program in the member circle, I'll be going into more detail about these things. Thank you to the new people who are coming. I'm just waving to y'all because I'm very happy that you have joined. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to address Nick's question, which is how can I be certain that I'm really resonating with my egun? That's an excellent question. And so I'm going to define egun because there may be some people on here who don't know what that term means. Egun is a Lukumi Yoruba word for ancestor. Within Afro-Cuban traditions, it has become sort of a catch-all for all sorts of dead things, or dead people, I should say. But it is really a term that is specific to one's blood ancestors. And so Nick wants to know, how can she be certain that I'm really resonating with her egun? Well, the first way to know that is to divine. And if you don't feel comfortable divining for yourself, you should you should most certainly identify a practitioner, that a reputable and ethical practitioner that you trust and that has the know-how to be able to help you identify which of your ancestors are present, which are functioning in a leadership capacity, and which of them are seeking a certain level of interaction. And divination is the primary tool through which you can assess that. So Nick, I hope that answered your question. Again, guys, if you've got any questions, just put them in the comment box, or you can go to my stories, and in one of the stories, you can put in questions and it'll pop up here, and I can answer them at that time. Thank you so much. That was a really good question. Nick, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's joining. So, left off, we were at section 3. That it is through work, doing different kinds of works with your ancestors and spirit guides, that one is able to remove stagnant and negative energies and usher in dynamic and generative energies. I want to take a moment to mention one thing that is very important in this, which is knowing when you have broached a topic that is above your pay grade. That is very important. Even as a priestess, there are issues and topics that come up where I'm just like, oh, girl, we are not going to handle this. I mean, I guess I could, but we're not. We, meaning me and the dead people, are gonna contact someone who is more adept than we are. And why is that? Because as emerging and even as established diviners, our sight for ourselves is approximately 180. And so if I'm going to give you an example. So right in front of me is my screen, and I can see you all popping up on my screen, right? I can see about 90 degrees this way and 90 degrees that way. I clearly cannot see what's behind me. I will, Satara, not to worry. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to answer Satara's question before I forget. So, if you would like to donate via Cash App or Venmo, you may do so using my username, which is Negara Akili, all one word, NEGARRAAKILI. Thank you very much for that, Satara. If you want to pin that somehow, I don't know if you can do that. That would be great. Pin that to the live. Maybe you can do it. I don't know. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So we almost, back to what I was saying about issues above our pay grade. So I can see 180 degrees on Venmo and Cash App. I can see 180 degrees. Thank you, Miles. Actually, it's NEGARRAAKILI. God bless you, though. I appreciate it. I can see 180 degrees. I can't see what's behind me. When I go to a diviner, they can see 360. They have a vantage point that allows me, that's okay, that allows them to see what is going on in a 360-degree view and then transmit that to me. Now, the reason why I always stress reputable and ethical is because you don't want somebody who A, can't see, and B, is going to lie to you. And while I hate that this is even a reality, there are complete and total charlatans out here. And whether you deal with me or someone else, I don't want you or anyone to have to deal with a charlatan. I would not, hey, Juju, I would never wish that on somebody. As my grandmother used to say, I wouldn't wish it on a dog I didn't like. Yeah. So that's why when we encounter issues that are difficult and that we feel like, oof, I might not want to deal with that, we go to somebody else. It is in your best interest to do so and go to someone who is reputable and ethical. Okay, Satara and Juju, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. You know, these makeup skills are new, so I've got to test it out. And today was not so bad. Hey, Sasha. So yeah, that being the case, please keep that in mind. And I think I mentioned that as a pro tip. Yes, that is precisely the pro tip. Big ticket items. That is on page 8, I believe. Yes, of the book. And so finally, part 4 is spiritual hygiene schedule. Now, this is where I go into full Capricorn mode, honey, because we need organization. We need, thank you, 10 letters. I appreciate you. We need organization. We need schedules. We need planning. Why? Because we've got busy lives. I work a 9-to-5 job. I come home. I see clients 3 days a week. And I try to sleep as much as I can, you know. I try to sleep, but if I don't have a schedule, none of that is getting done, you know? And so schedules are important so that you can incorporate it into your life and hold yourself accountable, also hold these dead people and these spirit guides accountable for what you need to be doing on a regular basis. This is how you see progress. This is how you see progress. And so I included in the book, not just why I think you should be having a schedule, but my schedule. And because I'm a Capricorn, it's a lot and it's extra. But I also have hella spirits that I'm dealing with. Not everybody has that. Thank you, Evolve to Love. I appreciate you. And so I give you my schedule so you can see that as an example and see what it is that I'm doing. I also, at the end of the book, create a blank template for you so that you can fill in your schedule, so that you can help yourself, hold yourself accountable to your spiritual hygiene regimen and by extension, your healing and your wellness. Now, I'm going to read the pro tip that I wrote for this part because it is very important so that you do not wear yourself out trying to do this, because we don't believe in wearing ourselves out. We believe in being effective and we believe in results. We believe in manageable schedules. That's what we believe in. So here's the pro tip for that part. Start with a schedule that is manageable. Detailed schedules with lots of tasks are great, but only if you can stick to it. Consistency is most important. Show your ancestors and your spirit guides that you can replicate a simple schedule and then increase as it makes sense to do so, and as always with their counsel and advice. Because you just can't be stressed out. It's not good to be all at your ultra stressed out behind something that you could have easily scheduled. Now, if we're talking about like a life situation, that's something else. Then yes, you should go to them and ask for their support and figure out what can be done. But stressed out over a schedule? No. Start small. Start small. Oh, I got questions. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do these questions. Alex, how long in this period of your life has it taken you to establish a consistent schedule you seamlessly move with? Whew, child, you want me to read myself for filth. Okay, so, okay, I see your question, Roy. I'm going to get to it after this one. How long in this period of your life has it taken you to establish a consistent schedule you seamlessly moved in? Or if I could ask you, Roy, to actually go to my IG story and post that there, that would be easier because then it'll pop up here. Establish a consistent schedule. So I have probably been the most consistent since I got my own place here in Seattle. So we're talking about fall 2014. Because I had my own place, I had my privacy, and I really had no excuse. And if I didn't do it, it was because of my own laziness. So while I have been a part of these traditions since 2003, officially since 2005, really and truly, and I'm not ashamed of this fact, really and truly, my consistency has really only come in the past, in the past 5 years. It's 2020. Actually the past 2014 to 5 years that my consistency has really come. Since I've gotten that consistency is when my spiritual sight has like ticked up, like popping. I know things that I don't want to know, let me tell you. But also the results of my works have been better. Thank you, Boy Venus and Satara, for instructing the people because I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to these things. I know that you can go to the IG story where the questions are and post it there, and I'll see it. So I hope that answers your question, Alex. Okay, let's get to this next question. Oh, perfect. I see it. Miles, I'll take yours first just because it's the order. How can I get better at reading myself? I can read anyone else but when it's me, it's like a blockage. Oh, you're sweet for calling me a legend. I have not reached legend status, but maybe in about 10 years when I'm 50, then I'll actually come out as a legend. It'll be great. And this face will still be lifted, honey, because melanin. Anyway, foolishness. Yes, you did do it, Roy. I'm going to get to you right after. How can I get better at reading myself? I can read anyone else, but when it's me, it's like a blockage. Any help? Okay, so what always sort of like helps kickstart when I feel like I'm blocked, helps kickstart my sight again is getting perspective again from another person. As I said, we have 180-degree sight. Minimally. On a good day, we might have 270. It's rare that we always have 360. It's not impossible. It's just rare. It's not consistent. At least that's been my experience. And so there are a few things that help me. If I decide that I want greater perspective, I'll go to a practitioner that I trust. And I'll get to that later, but we should all be developing lists of practitioners that we trust. I'll say more about that later. Anyway, so that's one thing that you can do. 2, working with herbs is almost unavoidable, particularly if you're dealing with African-rooted, African diasporic traditions. The herbalism components of these traditions are sort of their own traditions. They are so deep and profound, and the knowledge and the energy and the magic within those is just boundless. And so you should start to look at herbs and plants that decalcify the pineal gland. The pineal gland is here. This is what people call their third eye. And the pineal gland, over time, by diet, by environment, gets calcified. And so you can start to decalcify that using certain herbal remedies, supplements, also by eating certain foods that help that process. One that I can't recommend enough is holy basil. Regular basil works well too, so I'll recommend it as well. But basil and holy basil, you start to see results pretty immediately. You can make it in a tea, and literally you will see the improvement in your spiritual sight. And so I can't recommend enough herbal remedies. Working with herbs for spiritual baths. Actually, that's the next thing that I need to actually talk about, is that not only using the herbs internally, and holy basil is one that you can safely use internally as a tea, but also using them for spiritual baths. You know, we walk through the world and accumulate and attract all sorts of energy, particularly if you are an empath and your abilities are on all the time. There's all sorts of funky stuff in the atmosphere, whether you realize it or not. And so we should be doing spiritual baths on a regular basis. A part of the reason I make soap is because I don't feel like working up a liquid bath and soaking in the tub. Sometimes I just want to get in the shower and scrub down. And so I make soap, and I have a cleansing soap, and then I might have an abundance soap. And I use them to get the nastiness off me. Well, I use the cleansing soap to get the nastiness off me. So that is another recommendation that I would that I would offer. So I think I've given you 3. 1 is go get perspective from a trusted diviner. 2 and 3 are herbal solutions, using herbs internally to decalcify the pineal gland, and then using them externally in certain kinds of combinations, and also through working with your ancestors and having your ancestors help you consecrate these baths for a specific purpose, and using them externally to remove any negative energy. Okay, Miles, I answered your question. I am going to Nick and Brujo Colibri. If I can ask you to go to my IG stories and put your questions there, there is a question box. You probably have to scroll back a little bit and you'll see it, and put it there. And then that way it'll come up automatically. And I can just take questions in the order that they came. Okay, Roy, I'm getting to your question. I'm curious about sobriety coming from a family of addicted people, and how ancestors and spirituality might or not what. Okay, so your question, Roy, was cut off. So I'm not quite sure what it is. Are you talking about how your family's history of addiction could compromise your connection to your ancestors and spirituality? Well, if that's the question, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I think the question is. I think that Roy is asking about the way in which addiction patterns in families can have an adverse effect on one's ability to connect to ancestors and spirituality. It can, but it doesn't. That doesn't have to be the norm. That doesn't have to be your reality for forever. You know, I'll just be frank. I've got drug addiction and alcohol addiction on my father's side. And, you know, I've got anxiety and depression on my mother's side. And so, can they be affecting your reality now? Yes, they could. They could. Let me just finish my thought, and then I'll get to that piece of it. And so the thing is, when dealing with ancestors that suffered from addiction when they were alive, you really have to do an assessment about whether that ancestor, particularly if they have not shown any any willingness to improve their behavior is one that you should be venerating. And this is a hard topic for people, and I understand why, but it's not a hard topic for me. You have no obligation to venerate sociopathic, psychopathic, abusive ancestors. You know, I don't come from a tradition where that you have to do that. And so I'm not going to tell you to do that. Somebody else may tell you differently. I'm not somebody else. Nagara is telling you that you have no obligation to venerate, invite into your space sociopathic, psychopathic, abusive ancestors. You're not obligated to do it. Now, if you choose to do that, then yeah, you're going to have a problem on your hands. And this is where we get to your point, Roy, about whether it's affecting your reality. It could be. The way that you're going to know that is through divination, what divination that you do or divination that you have done for yourself, to see if there are any ancestors that who had these addiction problems and who are causing ruckus. But here's the tea. There are ancestors that led good lives, quote unquote, were holy rollers, and they act a mess too once they become dead. What, in my experience, ancestors, once an individual becomes an ancestor, once they die, they have as much, if not more, personality dead than they did when they were alive. As Satar well knows, I had a situation this week where I had somebody acting up, acted a whole fool. I'm not even going to introduce you all to that, but, this is just, how dead people act. And so the answer to your question is yes, but part of the reason that we have relationships and we establish relationships with boundaries with these dead people is precisely so that there's no wanton acting up, and so that we can be clear on who is welcome to the space and who is not. So I hope that answered your question. I feel like there might be one more. Oh, and Nick, thank you. What are some good reference for spiritual? Are you talking about books, Nick, or are you just talking about just general herbs that one should be familiar with? If it's books, I think what I'm going to do is post a list on my IG story sometime today or tomorrow. Thank you, Mermaid Queen. Juvia's Place, girl. But okay, back to your question, Nick. It's either I'm gonna post the response to your question via a list on my IG stories about good reference books. Yeah, I'm gonna post that. I'm gonna post that as a list. So I'll make sure to alert you so that you can get it. And I think that'll be a useful tool for most people. All right, I got another question. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, we did that one. Okay. Okay, Queen Booby. Any advice on initiating into Palo? So, that is not a topic that I discuss publicly. If you want to schedule a free info session with me, I'm happy to have that conversation with you one-on-one. What I will say is that for anyone looking to initiate into anything, that you need to do your research on the tradition to the greatest extent possible. You need to get, you need to find reputable practitioners, get a divination session with them and see how you feel about it. See what you feel about the vibe between you and that person. See what it is that they share with you about the tradition. And also take your time. Initiation is not something you should rush into. you should be taking it seriously. Initiation is something to be taken seriously. It changes your life. It's a lot of work. It is a set of tools that helps you do your healing. If your reasons for initiating is because you think it's cool, or because, you know, for instance, you see me on this live and you're just like, oh, she looks wonderful and this, that, and the third. I thank you for the compliment, but let me tell you, priestess life, hashtag priestess life, is a lot. And any person who is dedicated to their spirituality in this way, whether they be a Yai and Kisi Malongo like myself, whether they be a Olorisha, whether they be a Ianifa, a Babalao, or a Hungan Mambo, or even a full-time conjure worker. This life is not for the faint of heart. We look nice when we go out in public because we trying to be as regular as we possibly can. But regular people, we are not. And we do all sorts of things as indicated by our spirits, our spiritual entities, and all of those things, so that we can see improvement in our life, so that we can look like this. I'm glad that I look great to you all. I'm glad that you all are not telling me that I look nuts, because if I look nuts, you all should not be listening to a word that I said. Your spiritual practitioner, whoever you trust as your diviner or as your godparent, particularly as your godparent, should not look crazy. Their life should not be a wreck. It should not be any of the mess, quite frankly, that we see and hear about. Their life should be drama-free. Yeah. But I would suggest, Queen Booby, if you want additional details to the extent that I can share them, to go on my website and www.nagaraakadumu.com, and you can schedule a free info session, and I'm happy to share more in a one-on-one session. But thank you for that question. That was a very good question. And then there's one more in here. Oh, someone asked that about, they are Hispanic and they wanted to know about practicing hoodoo conjure. If I got the question correct. So hoodoo conjure, and I am by no means an expert. If you want to talk to somebody who is well versed and knowledgeable about hoodoo conjure, I wholly recommend I Am Satara, who is on this live right now. Brilliant woman, excellent worker, and her works walk, honey. And depending on the work, it might walk all over you. But anyway, neither here nor there. Hoodoo conjure is the African American spiritual tradition. Sorry, let me start over. Hoodoo conjure is the spiritual tradition of African American people here in the United States. Hoodoo conjure is an amalgamation of spiritual practices from the Africans that were enslaved and brought to the United States. And so, depending on how technical you want to get, some people might say that you as a Hispanic person, as a Latino person, should probably not practice hoodoo conjure. It is not my place to determine for anyone what they should and should not practice. Clearly, I am African American. I am not Cuban, but I am a priest. I am a Yai and Kisi Malongo of Palo Mayombe. Had someone taken that position with me, then I wouldn't be a part of this tradition. And so again, that's not something that I would ever tell somebody. What I can say is that for those of us who are practicing traditions, where we are not of the ethnicity or nationality where that tradition comes from, then it is upon us, it is incumbent upon us for us to practice that tradition with the utmost respect, ethic, and according to the protocol of the tradition. We cannot, nor should we be out here making things up, not acknowledging the history of these traditions, particularly in the case of hoodoo conjure and African rooted traditions. We should not be out here being anti-black, because every last one of these traditions was developed by black people and were held down in large part by black women. And so if you're anti-black and you hate black women, or you claim you love black women and black people, but your social media and your actions say otherwise, nah. And real yayis, real tatas, real lukumi priests, real conjure workers will be able to spot you in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. So, again, I think if you have a genuine interest in the tradition, then you need to find a practitioner who you can have some conversations with, and with whom you can establish potentially a mentorship or a godparent, godchild relationship. And just know that you need to be coming from a respectful place, respectful point of departure, and understand that your role is to uphold the tradition, which means following its protocols, and having the utmost respect for the ancestral founders of that tradition and your spiritual lineage. That's what I think about that. Thank you for the question, dear. And so I'm going to take a few more questions for the next 10 minutes if anybody has any. Actually, before I do that, I want to tell you all about the 2 services that I am developing that are connected to the Spiritual Hygiene ebook. Those services are one-on-one mentorship and a member circle. The member circle will be, is it giving me a time frame? Oh, I might have to stop and restart, but I'll talk quickly. So the member circle will be a 12-month program that goes through the curriculum of the book. So I will be developing a 12-month curriculum that's based off those 4 broad categories, and we will be discussing those in depth in community. The community aspect is important because these practices don't exist outside of community, and we all need to do a better job, myself included, of working within community. So there's that. The second program is a one-on-one mentorship program consisting of 8 sessions. That program also will follow that curriculum of the book, based out of those 4 broad categories that we went over, and it will be one-on-one. I am one of those people who works better one-on-one, while realizing that I also need to learn how to be in community and work that skill set as well. Both of those services will be available via my website as of January 21st, which is 10 days from now. So mark your calendars, check the website, because as of January 21st, all of those things will be listed there, and you will be able to sign up and reserve your spot. So I'm going to sign off because they're giving me like 14 seconds, and me and technology. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. This has been really, really amazing. I appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll talk soon.